Spain, Austria, France, Cape Verde, America, Germany, Brazil, India, and many more places around the UK. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening for the launch of I Am Every Woman. Before we begin, I would like to give some practical Zoom tips so we can fully enjoy our virtual evening together. Please mute your microphones and also put your screens on speaker view so you can see each author and enjoy their contributions. Now here's a little of how this evening is going to run. After the introduction, each author will speak about their story, their engagement with the project, and what resulted from their story writing, or read a short excerpt from their chapter. We've practiced to make it a great flow and fun, and they're only allowed 2 minutes. We also will have an insight into the creative design input from Karen Malacca and Mary Ellen Sanger. I tell you, it was an interesting process getting 15 women to agree on the cover image. Thank goodness for the marketing committee. Our authors are from all around the world. They've lived varied and extraordinary lives. What you hear from them this evening will tell you why this book is a must on your read list for this year. We will be running a short Q&A session at the end, so welcome your comments or questions for our authors. The chat will be open, so feel free to leave them there. If you have a question for a specific speaker, please name them. Questions we don't get to manage and answer will be answered through our social media channels. The book, which is here, I got mine yesterday, is now available on Amazon and it's priced £12.99. You will see links in the chat for that. Finally, we ask you to sit back, enjoy this evening and listen with your hearts. I would now like to introduce our MC for this evening, Sarah Camilleri. She is an amazing spa and wellness expert, a dear friend, has a big heart, wonderful soul, and has been part of our precious community since Coffee Morning #1. Over to you, MC Sarah.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Christine. I'm not seeing myself on speaker view. I don't know if anyone else is seeing me. Can I just check that before we start? Brilliant. Okay, so welcome everyone. Wow, we've got people from all over the world, as Christine said, and we'd really love you to use the chat. Because we've got so many people to talk to tonight, it would just be wonderful if you could really use that chat to tell us where you're from, who you're here to support, because you're such a special audience. So this is a very emotional moment for me because it's been a long year for everyone. I think it's been an incredible year. There's been a huge shift in the world, and myself, well, the reason I'm here tonight is to honour some incredible women that I've taken a journey with in the last year, meeting them every Friday for a simple cup of coffee. I hope you can see this. We thought we'd do screens today to show you the cover, but this arrived 2 hours ago and it's in my hand. And it's just not an ordinary book at all. It was made with so much love and commitment, and it will stay on my bookshelf forever. Because for me, I'm Every Woman is more than just a book. It's an extraordinary journey through life itself. Tonight, you're going to hear how I Am Every Woman has been crafted from many soul conversations by debut authors who really didn't know each other, but managed to hold space for one another during a remarkable year of great friendship, love and appreciation. And we talk about holding space, but I can't tell you how quickly that happened with all of us. And I'm really honouring tonight the women and the courage, trust and resilience it took to write their stories. So I really hope you feel the same sense of wonder that I felt when I got this copy 2 hours ago and actually saw all the stories together as one. And I would really love you to honour the women tonight by listening with your heart and thinking about the time and the hours it took to write every single beautiful word. Like every good story, you have to go back to the beginning. So there's one person that I need to bring into the room now, and that's my beautiful friend, Claudia Roth, who, as well as being an author with her own chapter in the book, brought this project to life. And for that, we're all extremely grateful. Claudia, please can you join me? I'd love you, in your words, to tell us how I Am Every Woman became a reality. I think you're, I'm going to say it, the famous phrase, I think you're muted, Claudia. Oh, hello.
Let's start again. That's a good one. Well, a very warm welcome to everybody, and thank you, Sarah, for leading us through the program. Yes, how did it all start? It was, I want to take you back to March 2020. It was around about the third week in March. The world was literally falling apart. Planes were grounded, borders went up. Words like lockdown, global pandemic, all these sort of words which I hadn't heard before and became my reality. And honestly, I couldn't handle it. I didn't understand it. My mind likes to understand things. I couldn't handle it. So one morning after my meditation, I thought I need to have a conversation. And I decided to get on my computer, send out an email and invite some of my closest friends and network for a cup of coffee and conversation. Now, it was one conversation on one Friday. It was the last Friday in March. And I thought, well, it is one conversation because I couldn't imagine that anybody had the same need to have a conversation. And to cut a very long story short, we met once, we met twice, we met 3 times. We are now meeting every Friday and holding that precious space for ourselves to really move into that space of, yes, the world is going through transformation, and we realize that transformation needs space for our own understanding of who we are and how we want to connect to that new world which is emerging in front of us. So that's a little bit about the story of the first initial thought which came, and it was a simple need for my own conversation. And 15 months later, we are here together to celebrate a very special outcome.
That's wonderful, Claudia. And, you know, I said earlier, it's not just an ordinary book. I mean, this is a book of the soul. There's been so much love and joy and sharing, tears, laughter, debate as well, to make this happen. But what do you think makes this book unique and special to you?
Exactly that, Sarah. It's, first of all, we came together. It was never the intention to write a book. It unfolded to become a book, our life stories. What makes that book so very, very precious is when you open the book, you will feel it. It's the energy we all individually wrote from our soul. We really went into our own unique story of who we are, and we're brave enough to connect with moments of difficulties, joy, hardship, whatever you want to call it. The book shares that from that place of deeper connection with really being connected to life itself, to our own unique self.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Claudia. We're going to move on quickly now because we have 15 authors to talk to tonight, and keep the messages coming in the chat, please, because we want to know who's here for who. And as an audience, you know, there's a lot of love in the room for the authors, and it will really help to hear what you've got to say and also hear your questions. For me, I think the thing that stands out most about the book is it shines with enormous intention. And I really hope that everyone that reads the book will find one story, maybe one sentence, or maybe several of the chapters will resonate with them and maybe make them think about how they can take a new path or find positivity or make transformation, as Claudia so beautifully articulated tonight. So without further ado, I ask you to sit back and relax, open your hearts to our 15 authors and the dedicated team behind the book, because it's very important to remember it's been written all over the world. It went to the mountains in Colorado to be edited by our beautiful Mary Ellen. And then it came back to the UK to be proofed and proofed by David, who I think was very privileged to be our first reader. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to beautiful Anya in Switzerland and Amanda in Spain to talk about the power of the collective. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Well, I would have never, ever dreamt that I can write a book with 14 other women. Unbelievable. And all these women come from across the world, and I don't know any one of them personally except Claudia. So it was amazing. We spent a whole year together. There were many tears. There were lots of joys. We shared our ups and downs, and we feel like a big family. And there was so much love to create this book, lots of sweat also. I'm sweating now too, but this is the excitement of today. And the process was just a fantastic, fantastic experience. I thank you all. And I can't wait to meet you all in person, because all this happened over the COVID time. So thank you very much to all of us. And I pass over to beautiful Amanda.
Well, thank you for that, Anya. And all I can say to anybody is that if Claudia ever invites you to a coffee morning, beware, because you might be in for something bigger than just a coffee. So I don't think that any of us, whether we were drinking coffee or tea, ever thought we'd be sitting here with so many beautiful people with a published book in our hands. But the interesting thing about this whole process is that there's an interesting saying, isn't there, that there's a difference between an adventure and an ordeal. And I think the book has been both. And the thing that defines whether it's an adventure or an ordeal is simply attitude. And within every single story that you're going to hear this evening, because you're going to hear each of the 15 authors either read a short extract from their story or tell you how it was to write that story, their attitude is what got them to put their pen to the paper, and actually is why they're here today. There are stories of adversity, there are stories of people with life-threatening conditions, and people who sat in waiting rooms and found that they've got something rather more serious than an ear infection. There are people from across the world with incredible stories. So what I'd ask you to do now is sit back and enjoy. And we're going to gently open I Am Every Woman, and you're going to hear the first 5 chapters from some very beautiful women who dared to be different and dared to open the chapter of their book during COVID. So I'm going to hand over to the very gorgeous Louisa and don her with the pants of power as she opens up this evening. Thanks, Louisa.
Thank you so much, Amanda, for that lovely, lovely introduction. Before I start, I would like to thank my family and friends, fabulous friends, you know who you are, who have supported me and at times carried me, and especially my daughter and sister, without whom the journey of these last 4.5 years would not have been possible. After reading the story, my son said, "It's very well written. Did you write this yourself?" So thank you, Mary Ellen, for questioning the flow of my story and helping me get to the final version of my chapter, The Scars of Life. I found that writing my story was like journaling with a deadline. It allowed me to order my thoughts. You know the ones that go round and round and round? Yeah, those ones. I will now read a few paragraphs of my story. Whatever you need to do, you'll do when you're ready. It took me 33 years to leave an abusive relationship. 33 years, and 2 children later. My daughter and I left on Friday, November 25th, 2016, the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. It wasn't intentional. I didn't even know such a day existed. But looking back, it seems appropriate for that day to be the day of our first step toward freedom. We sat at the kitchen table eating our first simple dinner in our new home. "Mummy, I'm so happy," my daughter said. "That's so lovely. What made you say that?" I replied. "I am no longer stressed. I didn't realize how stressed I was, but now I have a real sense of peace." And at that very moment, I knew that whatever hardships the next few years would throw at us, it would be worth it. We had taken our first step. We were on our way to freedom, and one day we would be free. Thank you all for listening and for your support. I now have the pleasure of handing you over to the gorgeous next author, Justine Clement. Thank you.
Thank you, Louisa. So I'm Justine, and just to say thank you to friends and family and my partner who's taken the time to join us tonight. I'm hugely grateful for all your love and friendship over the years. So geographically speaking, I was born in Wales, grew up in Cornwall, and now live in Surrey. And I've been sitting on this marketing committee and seen each step it's taken to get to this point. And it's a total revelation to be seeing everyone here on screen tonight. And just to see the book actually in print. I got so excited when it arrived today, I forgot to write my speech. So I was hurriedly writing it a few minutes before. But suffice to say, I feel hugely privileged just to be in such wonderful company this evening. And I'm in awe of the incredible stories of courage contained in the pages of this book. So my chapter is called The Risks and Rewards of a Curious Life. It's not a story of particular trauma, more about one of embracing life and just saying yes, even when I felt scared and just a bit out of my comfort zone. Writing my life story has been, I found, incredibly cathartic, and it's enabled me to join the dots together. I've always thought really that the steps I've taken in life have been a bit haphazard. And maybe they were, but writing them down has given me several aha moments and just helped me to make sense of it all. So I'm just going to read a short chapter from the actual book. Up until a few years ago, I'd worried about my approach to life, flitting from one thing to the next, never quite knowing where to lay my hat. I'd always admired people who knew what they wanted to be, a dentist, a lawyer, a doctor. They had a goal and they reached for it. But it wasn't until I heard Elizabeth Gilbert, author of Eat, Pray, Love, and Big Magic talk on the subject that I began to feel perhaps that I wasn't such a misfit after all. Her explanation was that there are 2 types of people in life. There are the jackhammers, which she considered herself to be, and these people are efficient, they focus on one thing in life, they get the job done, but they tend to be a bit obsessive and fundamentalist. Oh, how I long to be a jackhammer. But then there are hummingbirds, moving from tree to tree and flower to flower. Hummingbirds make incredibly rich and complex lives for themselves. They also end up cross-pollinating the world, bringing an idea from place to place and taking it to another, mixing things up and being open to fresh new opportunities that appear. Listening to her speak, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. There were actually other people like me. Not only that, she was making us sound quite exciting. All at once, I felt more normal and accepting of myself. All I needed was to trust. So thank you for listening to me, and I'm now going to pass you on to my next esteemed author, Julia.
Hello, good evening. So I'm Julia from London, and my chapter is all about second chances. It's about the chance to be curious and fearless, to appreciate the value of the moment and not wait until it becomes a memory, and to know that it's how we deal with hardship that will be the measure of our success. I'm now going to read a small excerpt from my chapter, which is called Titanium. Any out-of-body experiences? Oh yes, I've had plenty of them. Are you hearing voices, Julia? Any sudden religious conversions? And what about personality changes? No to all of those. Unusual hobbies? Well, I enjoy drinking Earl Grey tea in bed in the morning while reading House and Garden, but is that so unusual? What's this? He held up a pen. Well, I don't know what brand it is. It's not Mont Blanc. Well, what about this? He pointed to the nib. And it occurred to me only then that the answers were quite simply a pen and its nib, and that I'd overthought the earlier question, typical of someone who works in the luxury industry. By now, I was wondering if I'd walked into the right room. Here I was at 78 Harley Street, meeting Mr. Bassey for the first time. A man, though I didn't know it at the time, was going to play an integral part in my life. A man who every year, apart from during the COVID-19 pandemic, I was going to hug, whether it was appropriate or not. Such was my bond with him. A man who I would come to hold in the very highest esteem. Julia, you've got a massive brain tumour and we need to remove it urgently. You've had it for over 20 years and it's pressing heavily now on your brain. I'm sending you to see a neurologist as we need to test some functions, as it's quite possible you've already had some brain damage. I wasn't prepared for such an announcement, as I had no symptoms, no headaches, no vision loss, no mobility problems, and yet I was calm as I walked immediately afterwards to see the next consultant, a specialist in emergency neurology and movement disorder. Dr. Weeks asked me to walk across the room. It was only about 5 paces. I was bemused. This was truly a surreal experience. And what was coming next? And was this itself an out-of-body experience? Thank you, and I now pass to the co-author, Sharon.
Thank you, dear Julia. Your chapter is so special. Let me start by thanking you all for joining us and supporting our book. This has been a labor of love. Thank you to my co-authors. I actually scripted what I was going to say, and I thought I would also read a few lines from my chapter. However, I don't think I will, as I sincerely hope that you will read it yourself when you have the book in your hand. So let me speak to you from my heart. Trust that whisper in your heart. How many times have you felt a flutter in your heart, that gut feeling, that instinct? We all have, and have we followed it? Well, let me tell you. I grew up in a loving family with an Indian background to much older parents in Kenya. I have been told many times that I was a product of the colonies of the British Empire, and I love that. I had a very liberal upbringing with strong focuses on good education and spirituality. I was sent to good schools. However, as I grew older, the main push was for me to get married. We know that. The whisper that I heard was it was started when I was about 11. I remember my parents had brought back beautiful wedding saris for me from India. Something within me knew that I would never wear them. Where did that come from? I was only 11 and I haven't worn them. I rebelled, broke conventions, and indeed made my own way, leaving all my security behind. I had this deep feeling that I was letting my family down and I was seeking validation and approval, which has plagued me a lot. Writing the chapter in this book has made me realize that I always had that strength within me. In 2007, I volunteered in a school in Darjeeling where I met 2 girls who had been rescued from human trafficking. They did not have the choices like I had. I decided to support the education of these 2 girls who now have their own business. Together with some amazing trustees, we now have a UK-based charity called the Darjeeling Children's Trust, helping many children. That was a whisper I really heard. I do hope that you all listen to your whispers in your heart and trust what you hear. I would now like to introduce you to our dear Liliana.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. It's an honor to share these precious moments here with you all. My friends and family, Claudia and fellow authors, Mary Ellen, Sarah, and David, all part of this wonderful project. I Am Every Woman is a book that comes from the heart. So it is love together in one great adventure. Love, faith, and hope is the core essence of my story. No matter what we do or go through in life, there is always love, faith, and hope to carry us through. I cannot not do that. I would like to share an excerpt of my chapter, I can never say that word, with you today, which is the reason to why I decided to share my journey in this book. My name is Liliana Martins, and I am Afro-Portuguese. My parents are from Cape Verde Islands, and I was born in Portugal. In recent psychology sessions, I traveled back to the age of 4, to the deepest and the most important pain that I have stored in my body, mind, and soul. I allowed myself, at the age of 50, to return to painful places and incidents that I had carried all my life, as if they were still happening. Such events as feeling like a victim of circumstances when I was physically smacked as a child, the disempowered decisions I made throughout my adult life in relationships, because any expression of authority would take me to a place of fear and submission, harking back to the restrictions placed on me by my parents and my grandparents. Despite living in a loving family, punishment and smackings came with the culture of raising children. My parents' African culture was so ingrained in me that when I visited Africa for the first time, it was a journey for the soul. In Africa, I faced the questions of who am I and who am I becoming? This land was the vital component that helped me understand the nature of my relationships with others. Ultimately, it taught me the meaning of life. Thank you for being here today, allowing us to come together with the sole intention to share love, faith, and hope. And I would like to hand you over to Amanda. Thank you.
Well, wow, what an opening from 5 amazing women. And I hope that's given you already a real flavour of what this incredible book is all about. Soul stories, soul stories. So speaking of souls, I'm going to hand over to the creative genius that is Karen, who is just going to say a few words about the work of the marketing committee, which I believe is a bit of a roller coaster here and there when you get 14 strong women together. But anyhow, I'll hand over to Karen, and if anybody's got any comments or feedback or questions, please keep them coming in. It's just such a joy to see all the comments and support coming through in the chat. So over to you, Karen.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. Yes, as Amanda said, I invite you now to come and have a look behind the scenes of what it means to create a book with 15 authors. Well, actually, we very quickly decided we need to reduce complexity and started a marketing committee with 7 of us deciding for the rest of the group. And because everything started with Claudia's wonderful coffee mornings, we very quickly decided on the interior design of our book. We offered the authors to choose one of 6 coffee mugs and fill it with not coffee, but with words. Words they took from their stories and which they felt would most describe the content of the stories. After this, there was still a long way to go. We had to decide how the book cover would look like. Would it be colorful or plain, with flowers or plants? What should be written on the back of the book? Which typeface do we want to have? Do we need to order the chapters and how? And do we need themes or quotes? Actually, I didn't know that one has to select so many or answer so many questions when creating a book. And we all were very passionate about it. We were only 7 of us, but we gave each other a lot of room to discuss every little detail. This was sometimes a little bit tiring, I must admit, because we had to meet once or sometimes even twice a week to make all the decisions we had to make. But it was also a very beautiful process at the end, because after all the discussions we had, we always stepped back and said, okay, now what would be the best for our readers? So when you hopefully soon hold this book in your hands, everything you see there, even the smallest dot, is there because we have decided this would be the best for you. And we hope it was worth it. We hope you like what we have decided, and we hope you enjoy the book. And with this, I want to hand over to another member of the marketing committee. I want to call her the soul of the marketing committee, to lovely Christine, to share a bit of her own story.
Thank you, Karen, for the lovely words. Oh gosh, that's really touched me. So I'm just going to read a little of an excerpt from the start of my story. And I hope you enjoy it and it will entice you in to read it more. I am standing in the middle of a large church hall in my freshly washed pale blue leotard, flesh-coloured ballet tights and ballet shoes with neatly tied ribbon. Everything is in its place. Even my hair is in a regulation headband and net. I look ready for my primary grade ballet exam at age 6, except I don't feel ready. I am the only dancer on the floor. The examiner is behind a table and the pianist is in the corner, both strangers to me. I hold myself strong, even though inside I am afraid. I do the bar exercises, point my toes, do my character dance for all I am worth, and clap the rhythms of crotchet, minons, and quavers successfully, despite my fears and sense of loneliness. I learned a lot through my ballet classes: resilience, how to be a pretend extrovert to divert attention, and that I could protect myself with self-created barriers. These self-supporting tools have been with me all my life, though until I wrote my story, I had no idea as to where I had gained them. They had helped me through divorce, diagnosis of a heart condition, and the challenges of being referred for heart transplant and then not being viable. My inspiration for writing my story is to enable everyone, even those with a life-limiting condition, to live their best life and know their own inner supporter is cheering them on. And I have been well and truly cheered on by all my wonderful co-authors. And I would now like to pass over all the way across the pond to Susan Devine in America.
Thank you, Christine. I was born in Puerto Rico, have lived in multiple countries around the world, and I'm speaking with you today from the mountains of Asheville, North Carolina. Welcome and thank you, everyone, for being here. The title of my story is Death and Life. Within a few years, I would lose both mom and dad, observe several extraordinary phenomena, and receive my own cancer diagnosis. When Claudia called to see if I'd be interested in writing a chapter of my life, I knew immediately that this is what I'd write about because I wanted to share my discoveries. I learned so much from being present with mom and dad in their final months and days. And it was during this time that I began to develop my spiritual beliefs and adjust my life priorities. I now realize there's a transition period before a person dies, and being present to go with the flow in conversation during this special time allows for the greatest learning. I share these very personal conversations with you. My eyes opened wide when TVs opened or turned on by themselves and books fell from the bookshelf without anyone being near. And I was amazed to discover this type of activity actually happens frequently when somebody is on their deathbed or has recently passed. I feel that more people should know this. I've also realized that as we go close to death, we learn the most about life. The important things become very clear. And if we listen, we can learn to live and love more fully. My mom's message to me is, it's a wonderful world. I pass on this message to you. Thanks for being with us today. And now I hand over to our Greek goddess, Stella, back on the other side of the pond.
Thank you, Susan, and hello from across the pond in North London. I've got to be honest and say, when I was asked to contribute to this project, I dragged my heels and kept finding excuses that I was too busy to write it. After some gentle reminders, in fact, lots of gentle reminders from my dear friend Claudia, I decided just to get on with it and sit down and write. And somehow it all just poured out alongside all the old emotions of feelings of loss and unworthiness from previous years. I cried for days after writing the chapter, but felt like a weight had been lifted and went on to heal some very important relationships in my life. Here's a small part of my chapter. My parents were determined to have more children. So what followed were years of them both going through pain and suffering to make it happen. My mother's rare blood type brought on a condition in which her antibodies would attack the red blood cells of the baby when she was pregnant. This meant prolonged periods of time in hospital, giving the baby's blood transfusions. All of her subsequent 3 pregnancies ended with premature births and deaths of her babies. All were given names as well as birth and death certificates. My parents tried to shield me as much as they could from their heartache and what was going on. But I remember my father coming home from the hospital exhausted and sad. I have memories of my mother coming home from the hospital and lying in bed, broken, and staring at the death certificate of my little brother Andrew, born at 6 months. My uncle had bought me a puppy to distract me, but as I look back now, it seems obvious that all I really wanted to do was get closer to my mum and tell her that all would be okay. But I didn't. I was an astute, intelligent child though, and by the age of 8 could recite in detail my mother's condition using medical terms and explanations. However, somehow when I look back, I can't remember any of the emotions I had at the time. I heard many years later that my parents decided to stop trying for another child when I asked them if I wasn't good enough on my own for them. I can't remember saying this or even thinking it, but we humans have a habit of suppressing painful emotions to protect ourselves. My body spoke though. At the age of 10, I developed alopecia, where I had small bald patches appearing on my head. I think this is a clear indication that at some point, the body eventually reacts to emotional pain, even in children. Thank you for listening and for being with us here tonight. My big wish for my chapter is that it helps other women to release and accept their emotions so that they can heal themselves and their relationships. I'd now like to pass on to the beautiful Uma, who is joining us from India.
Hi, everybody. This is Uma from Auroville, India. It was just an honor for me, a bit of a surprise when Claudia asked me to write a chapter in the book. And I never thought about what that would be. And initially, when I began writing, there was a lot of anger in me. And my chapter was the blowing the last wind of patriarch, growing as a woman and having 5 daughter sisters with us in the family, having a 6th daughter and seeing father going through this whole trauma, what to do with these girls, an Indian dowry system. And my whole journey of trying to protect my father and not to go into that. I couldn't see my dad suffering, trying to earn money to give dowry, to get us married. These were my first paragraph, which just took over me, as I've never looked at my life journey like that. And now that I live in Auroville, chapter began to end in a beautiful way. And the beautiful part was when David gave me a title, it was no more of this blowing the last wind of patriarch and anger in me as being a woman and finding my own space, what that would be. And the beautiful part of that was this honoring the femininity, a divine feminine, and honoring the value of this divine feminine, the journey, the spiritual journey, which began for me when I joined Auroville as a community, and last 25 years I live over here. Slowly, this whole immersion, especially during the lockdown, that when this time world is going through transformation, if I'm not going to be who I am, and if I'm not able to find who I am going to be. We all goddesses, not only 15 of us who have written the chapter in the book, I'm every woman, but all of you. It's that journey to pen it down and listen to each other. I'm really looking forward to the book to appear in India and have my own copy and give it to all my friends. I'm so glad to have all of you here. I need either Amanda or Stella to tell me whom I'm passing on to.
Well,
Please.
We're going to pass over to the very lovely Elodie from France now. So thank you.
Thank you.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Unmute. It will be better with the unmute button. So thank you so much, Uma, for sharing your story, and thank you, Amanda, for introducing me. So my name is Elodie. Yes, you can recognize my accent. I'm totally French, being in London, and my chapter is Being Alive. I started writing my story years back to exorcise the brace I wear in my life, and wanted to help people and that have similar trials to be heard and find support. But then my limiting belief that I had at the time made me abandon the project. So when Claudia offered the opportunity to revisit my writing, I jumped on it. I revisited my past, my presence, and the journey I have been on, and how it could resonate, inspire to break free and be alive. Here in an extract. I was born with a double scoliosis that was detected when I was 2 or 3 years old. I remember going each year for a checkup at the hospital until the beginning of puberty. At the last visit, the doctor suggested that I undergo an operation to attempt to control the twist and curves of my spine. My parents were devastated and looked for the twist and look for any other solution that could prevent the surgery, in which the spine is straightened using the rods attached with screw, hooks, and wire, something I had a nightmare about. The alternate option was visiting an hospital near the sea, where I will be attached to a bed and wear a Milwaukee brace. They chose the latter. I wasn't asked, I had no say. This felt like imprisonment. I was a young girl and my parents were in full control. After 4 hours of consultation, I went out with my first Milwaukee brace, which among the most restrictive of back braces, it runs from the pelvis all the way to the neck. A pelvis corset, thoracic pad, neck ring, and rib pressure pad. I was 10 years old, shy and totally unprepared and unsupported for this experience that had lasted 8 years. So sorry, I didn't, so it was so emotional. So I'd like to thank this opportunity to thank all my co-authors for their trust and their enthusiasm. The marketing committee that had to put up with my French criticism, and all my friends for their unconditional support. And I pass on Amanda. Thank you.
Oh, well, beautiful, Elodie. Thank you. Because, and hopefully what everybody's picking up who's sitting here tonight is listening to stories that cross countries and cross worlds, and actually it's a big thing. It's a big thing to tell your truth, and it's an even bigger thing to actually sit here and share and read out words. So thank you, Elodie, and thank you to all of you beautiful women here. I am going to hand over to the divine Susan, or the Susan Divine, who will be speaking to gorgeous Mary Ellen about how you can write your own chapter. But Elodie, in the interim, I'm sending you a massive hug too. Mwah.
Thank you, Amanda. We now have the opportunity to talk with somebody who has been an integral part of our project, who is very near and dear to our hearts, Mary Ellen. Mary Ellen's our amazing editor. She was the creator of our book cover designer, and she's the insightful author of the last chapter of our book titled How to Write Your Own Story. So Mary Ellen, we know that with 15 authors, this project was probably a little bit different than some of the other projects or writing that you've done in the past. Can you tell us a little bit about what your personal journey has been with I Am Every Woman and what some of these stories mean to you?
And I'd be happy to talk about that. When you asked me about 8 months ago if I would become part of this project, actually it wasn't also very different from what I was doing. I had, for the last 15 years, I've been facilitating writing workshops, writing with new authors, established authors, all kinds of people putting words on pages. And my own book is centered around women who are brought together during strange circumstances, much similar to the 15 of you. So in my practice as a facilitator, I operate under the belief that we all are the most authoritative and best voices to tell our own stories. I don't teach writing, I facilitate writing because everyone already has that voice there. It's just a matter of getting it out and getting it out onto the page. So when I received these little packages in the email with a new manuscript, I treated it like a little gem. I was so excited to hear these stories. And right now it's so emotional for me to be seeing a lot of you for the first time, even though we've worked together intimately for the last 7 months getting your stories out. In my first run through the stories, they were all glowing on the page. They were glowing, and I would just treat it sort of like a newborn baby, like maybe tuck a comma in here and pat this paragraph on the head and just sort of smooth it out a bit. And then in conversation with Claudia and Susan, we realized that for many writers, this is the first time that they had to get a story out. So any of you who do the exercises that are in the write your own story part will see that once you put your words on the page, so much comes tumbling out. And so our work became, the intimate work we did together with each writer was focusing on the intention and getting to that shining part that they really wanted to share in this book with the rest of the world. I can assure you that all of these authors, and probably anyone who puts their word on the page, has a book in them. It's once you start writing. So do try those exercises.
Thanks, Mary Ellen. You, in your piece, of How to Write Your Own Story, titled How to Write Your Own Story, you say, and I'm going to quote a line that I love, writing your own life journey may be one of the most important and powerful steps you take towards self-discovery. Can you explain what you mean by this? I think Mary Ellen is lagging. I hope she comes back on.
Certainly. As we already mentioned,
I think we may need to continue. And if we get Mary Ellen back, maybe we can come back. But I do know that, and I think you see through all of the author presentations, really just what a powerful and healing experience that writing our own life journey has been for us. And we hope that after reading I Am Every Woman, that all of you would consider doing the same. So Amanda, I pass back to you.
So we're going to meet the final of the 5 authors out of the 15, and I'm going to open and hand over. There's a strong overseas contingent here, and I'm going to start with the lovely Karen again. Over to you, Karen.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda, again. The title of my chapter is The Power of Pain. And this is actually a learning I had several years ago at work when I was so close to suffer burnout. And this was also the motivation for me to writing this chapter, because I thought I had so many learnings and findings, and also, of course, solutions, that I really would like to share them with people who might be in a similar situation now that I have been to several years ago. And one of the learnings I want to share with you now by reading it from my chapter. I feel as I'm in the role of a tragic hero in a play that I never auditioned for. Has such a character ever survived until the final curtain? I speak with my doctor about it, and she writes me a sick note. The hero exits the stage for 4 weeks. I have never been sick for such a long time. I do not feel comfortable about it, but I do not have a choice. I inform my boss and call my main contacts. A colleague tells me that she is not surprised. Everybody has witnessed what has happened to me, and many were wondering how long I would be able to cope with it. I begin to question myself. Why did I not talk earlier about my situation to some trusted colleagues? I wish I knew. When in my life did I internalize that I have to be strong and I'm not allowed to fail? It is a pity that I blocked myself, because actually it is interesting to find out what others think. My colleague shares an example with me. Even the best high jumper cannot jump over a bar that is too high for a human being to reach. You already jumped over a bar that is higher than most of us would have been able to reach. And with this, I would like to hand over to another author who does not only jump high, she even flies high. So Anja, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Karin. Yeah, my name is Anja, and I think I have to count. I've lived in over 15 countries. And where do I live now? I live in Munich. I retired. The last 12 years I was in Geneva. And you know what? Writing this whole chapter now of my book, I thought I'm ready to write the second book now. Where do I belong? I already have the title. And let me read to you about my flying high. In Darwin, I started to learn how to fly a Cessna. Anja, the next round you fly on your own. Oh my God, the day had come for my first flight without my teacher. I took off and did my round, and the tower was broadcasting all kinds of instructions, but I did not pay attention. I was focused on coming down in one piece again. Anja, do you have a biro? I was asked. Please, Take down the following number and contact us once you have parked the plane. I had created a major chaos at Darwin Airport by not following instructions. Really, I caught it from them. Nevertheless, I received my license and continued to fly in Hong Kong. For those of you who knew the old airport, it was an adventure to land between two jumbos jets on the only one runway. Here a saying from Africa comes to my mind. I lived many years in Africa. If you think you are too small to make a difference, you haven't spent a night with a mosquito. I felt like that mosquito. Thank you. And I hand over to Claudia.
Thank you, Anya. Well, every time I hear the stories, I get so touched. And when I think about my story, it was as if it's 20 years or so past. But what I'm telling you or sharing with you is my journey from a life I dreamed of having, a career in the international hospitality world, successful, whatever that means in that world. I worked hard, and yet I was meant to fall into a space which you call the dark night of the soul. My luxury life was my prison. The first time I knew for sure that something was not quite right was when I woke up in a luxury suite at the Ritz in Paris. Early morning sunshine illuminated the white marble bathroom, and I gazed into a mirror as wide as two oversized sinks, only to see a giant BlackBerry imprint checkerboarded on my cheek. My work was literally disfiguring me. As I look back on the transition from being a high-flying corporate executive to a simple no one riding her scooter in Oroville, a spiritual community in the south of India, I conclude that my search was always for freedom. Only I was looking for it in the wrong places. Choosing the road less traveled is not easy. And herewith, I would like to pass on to our beautiful goddess, Astrid. She is calling in from Amsterdam. Astrid, please come on stage.
Thank you, Claudia. Hi, everyone. Buon tardi to all my friends and family from near and far. I'm Astrid. I was born in Colombia and I raised in Curacao. I lived in Puerto Rico and I finally settled in the Netherlands. My chapter is only a fraction of my life. It describes how I experienced my transformation process. It's the story of a modern middle-aged woman living an inner struggle, a search for her true calling, a continuous battle with anxiety and emotions of uncertainty originated from childhood traumas. But life's paths brings you where you have to be, and life events sometimes give you no other choice than to jump into the unknown. It became a journey of fear and failure, of faith and resilience. Writing this chapter has been one of the biggest challenges I allowed myself to experience. And while writing, I sense a lot of self-compassion and self-love. I lived great part of my life feeling ashamed and accumulated a lot of pain. I know how to put that smile on my face, but I never ever would show the scars of my heart. Still, here I am, sharing a small part of what made me who I am today. Vulnerable, but immense grateful and truly hoping I can convey a message of hope to you. If I look back now on who I was before and who I am now, the two women are miles apart. I've changed from the inside out. I found freedom inside myself, a space I've come to love and treasure. And so the journey continues. I want to close my introduction with a quote that has been my inspiration throughout this process. Change is the essence of life. Be willing to surrender what you are or what you could become. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to all of you for joining us tonight. And now I would like to pass the word to our last co-author of this evening, our very lovely Amanda.
Thank you, Astrid. Right, woohoo, here we go. Well, what can I say? Writing your own story is like unpacking a suitcase that's probably full of all sorts of emotions and memories and things that you've neatly piled away, put the zip on and tucked away. So words that come into my mind about writing this story is traumatic, terrifying, and liberating. And it was the most interesting thing that's come out of this writing this story for me was I felt that I ought to share the story with my daughters before it went into print. And I had one of the most honest conversations with my 21-year-old that I've probably ever had, who turned around to me and said, and she's studying psychology, so I guess she knows about this stuff. And she went, "Mum, your childhood was really traumatic." So I tucked all this away. I've met some people on the way who helped me unpack some of that baggage along the way. But yeah, it was. So in my story, you'll read a little bit about my beautiful mum, who my sister and I adored, running off to Spain to live with an artist when I was 13, about her death 3 years later, about living with my dad, who was absolutely traumatized by her leaving, and turned his anger often on my sister and I, with probably one of the defining moments was when he was driving along in a car with me next to him, and he started to try and hit, well, he didn't start to try to hit me, he was hitting me, so I jumped out of a moving car. So it's an interesting thing. We all have our scars. We probably we are who we are because of the scars. We carry them with us, but I've learned huge resilience through this. Now, I mentioned earlier that I found these beautiful coffee mornings like a safe harbor, but I also, and I put my anchor in the coffee mornings, but my mum wrote me a poem just before my 16th birthday, 2 months before my 16th birthday, and probably about 3 or 4 weeks before she died. And I'm going to share with you those words because they've been my anchor, and I hope some of them will resonate with you tonight, and they are in the book. So here we go. She said, "Have confidence, be brave in this wide world. Fear nothing, for fear is a canker which gnaws at the core and damages the fruit. But fill your heart with love, for love is at the root of all life's joy and mystery. Remember, you are an amalgam of all those who have touched you and those who have touched them ad infinitum. But at the center of all that lies the essence that is you. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm going to hand back to my very beautiful friend, whose birthday it is tonight as well, the gorgeous Sarah Camilleri. Thank you.
Wow, Amanda, it's just lovely to finish on your beautiful mother's words. And, you know, I've got that poem from your mother on my wall here, and it helps me sometimes when I need that little bit of extra help. So I feel like she's my mum too. Well, there's all I can say is I think the women tonight have been very brave and beautiful, and I'm just so proud of all of you, and just, you know, the courage it took. And I'm sure everyone in the audience feels the same, because I'm just looking at the audience and hopefully everyone stayed with us, which is amazing. So there's been lots of beautiful listening and holding space tonight. There's not many more words I need to say. I would like to hand over to Christine and Liliana. And, you know, we would love any questions on the chat from anyone. And we're going to open up the microphone. So please, I'll hand over to Christine, actually, because she's better at handling this than me. I don't know why I'm making it up as I go along. So I'll be quiet, Christine, and hand over. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We actually haven't really had many questions. There have been immense amounts of beautiful, beautiful comments and love shared for obviously friends of our authors. Liliana, did you pick up any questions on the way through?
Yes, one just came through from Barbara Sensed. I hope I'm saying your surname correctly. She says, I am curious if authors have waited until now to share their stories, have wanted to openly share any trauma experiences so that your community can benefit from your knowledge, or were the emotions too personal? Have your feelings since changed? So I repeat that because I think that's a general question to any one of the authors who wants to answer that and resonates a little bit more. She says, I'm curious if authors have waited until now to share their stories. They have wanted to openly share any trauma experience so that your community can benefit from your knowledge, or were the emotions too personal? Clarify me here, Barbara, since I take that you are asking us that if we were waiting until now to share so the community can benefit from our knowledge and emotionals, or if it was very personal. I personally would say that we have, the book is written for people who, for everybody, so you can share your story as a way to heal, because that was the experience that we had. You know, because we started as a coffee chat, and you know, and then we found out that by sharing our stories amongst ourselves, it was a form of healing. So yes, it is a community. It's more a community and a collective book. But if anyone else wants to chip in for an answer,
I'll chip in if you don't mind, Liliana. Yes. I'm chipping in mainly because I want to say how difficult it was for me to share my story, because there were lots of personal emotions, and there was, you know, I didn't even know what I was going to write until I sat down and wrote it, and a lot of past emotions and events that I just pushed to the back of my mind came out. So it took me quite a long time to get over that fear of, and I guess open myself to my vulnerability to allow that to be public. And I'm still dealing with it. I've got to tell you, I'm still dealing with a bit of that fear. But it is, I think, for me personally, and I know for some of the other authors, I think our desire to help people with our stories, to allow people to understand that these emotions are probably quite normal, and you know, everyone's got a story, everyone's got a backstory, and I think our desire to show that and help others with it overcame our own fear, and so I hope that answers your question, Barbara.
Can I just say one thing just quickly? I think you said one word in there, Stella, allow. And I think it was the space of allowing. And that's what has been created with our coffee mornings, just with the people who have joined, people who are part of it. And yes, so it's all part of where we've come from, where we're at, and where we're going to. So who knows where we're going to go next? I think maybe we will be heading into other areas. We might be getting another book. So I'm actually going to pass back to Claudia now, as we are past the hour, and give her the space to close this, our event.
Thank you so much. I don't know what to say, if I'm really honest. If you consider it all started with a conversation, and it is now turning into a movement to honor every woman. It has been an incredible journey, being together on this journey, and you have now felt it. The space we held for each other was phenomenal. Now, I would like to share a few thoughts, because this book would not have been, or wouldn't be in our hands, because there's a lot happening in the background. So the behind the scene is almost as important as the front of the house. So first of all, we want to thank all our supporters of the Coffee Morning. Thank you for making this space the possibility for allowing a book, a movement for every woman to emerge. I want to thank specifically our host today, Sarah, who is celebrating her special, her happy birthday, Sarah, again, and we will toast to this later. I want to say thank you to Ferhan and Annie, who hold space, who have held space for us to come together. Very active members of the community. Judy Biatkas, which has been there every Friday. You provided encouragement for us to go that path. On the practical side, this book was born through a powerful intention-setting workshop by Veleda back in the summer. Every single aspect of this book was really coming from the place of the soul. The stories were edited, as we know and heard, from wonderful Mary Allen, who really saw the soul behind the book. David, who proofread, and our designer, Vivishana of Soulscape, complemented the production team. And finally, the title was also a collective experience by our lovely Corina. She came up with the title, I'm Every Woman, and we all love that title. So thank you to everybody. I personally found this year of journeying together to create this book was just beyond words. I see this book as a testimony to souls who have chosen to turn up in their wisdom space, to hold space for every woman around the world. So it is an invitation to you to support us in sharing our message if you choose to. We meet every Friday morning at 9 o'clock UK time. We have other activities, and who knows what will emerge from now on. We are invited by our wonderful supporter Anu for another virtual book launch. So now that we don't have to come together in a physical place, we can really trailblaze around the world together, which we will do so. I would like to close our evening together with some beautiful words from our goddess Sarah. Every woman is important. Every word, every tear, every brave moment on the journey of their lives. And on that note, we are here for every woman with our stories, with our hearts, and with the love we share for each other as a community and for every woman and every man on this earth. We love you. We leave you. Stay engaged with us if you choose so. Buy the book, give it away, give it as presents, whatever you can do to help every woman to be the beauty and stay in the space and be in the space of who she is. That would be wonderful for us to know. In that note, we as authors give each other and you a virtual hug. Come with us on the journey of every woman.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Goodbye.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Woo!
Well done.
Right.